I'm Felina.
And I'm Summer.
And you are listening to Broken Broken.
Because we're both.
The podcast about living your best life by getting real.
Hey, broken people. This is Summer. Don't worry, Felina hasn't gone anywhere. I'm just tacking on an extra introduction right before we upload. Originally, we did not intend to make a separate introduction to this episode, but I decided to, based on some criticism that we received about the photo that we used in last week's episode, and I just wanted to address that. First of all, I take full responsibility for the artistic decision that was made. I regret nothing, and I would change nothing about it. If you haven't seen last week's episode, it was Felina's introductory episode, so the audience could get to know her and all her awesomeness. She is an amazing woman, and the photo that we used was a gorgeous black and white artistic concept of her with her guitar. She is wearing a matching lingerie set. Most of her body is actually covered, in the way that the photo is shot, but she is posed so that you can see some of her tattoos because she's very artistically inclined in that way as well and likes to express herself in that way. But we received some criticism about that. The one message that I'm referring to in particular began with, first of all, real women don't wear lacy things all the time, which is interesting and also patently untrue. I know I wear lace almost every day. I know a lot of women who do wear these coordinated sets all the time. In fact, I wear a lacy chemise to bed every single day. In fact, most of the time when you hear me recording solo on these things and all the editing on the podcast, that's usually what I'm wearing. So in reality, a lot of women do. So while the women who submitted this comment may not, let's not say real women don't, because that's just untrue. And the next line was a complaint that Felina was not referred to as a musician until the last sentence, which actually I don't think we actually called her a musician at all in the caption for the photos. I did write the copy for all the social media posts. I don't think any of them ever called her a musician, to be perfectly honest. It said, the special bonus, you get to listen to one of her new songs. However, I see no reason to. It's a very interesting criticism. I see no reason to label her a musician. The first line, or the second sentence refers to her as a multi-talented artist / mother / angel / sexy superhero. She's posed with her guitar. I don't understand the reason we should label every one of her artistic pursuits, but okay. But the last part, which is really what I wanted to address, was the complaint about what she is wearing and saying that I don't understand why everything involving women has to be for male gaze. And honestly, this photo, from a photography perspective, it's very artistic shoot. I don't see that as for male gaze at all. I see a beautiful, strong woman posed with her soulmate, her music, embodied symbolically by her guitar. How this photo came about was, if you remember episode 6, that was the one that was about me. I as well it was a lingerie photo. How that came to be the photo that was used was this entire conversation happened with talking about our podcast is about the human condition, and all of our guests speak about issues that are very difficult. They're very difficult for them. They're emotionally complex, and they can be very difficult to talk about, and you feel very vulnerable. And so that was what I was talking about when we were going through the editing process, was that you really do feel vulnerable. And so I thought it was important for the co-host to do an episode so that we understand what it feels like to be on the other side of this, and so guests understand that we've been through this too. And the symbolism in my artistic mind would not go away about the, laying everything bare and just putting ourselves out there and being very vulnerable. And so I looked through all the some photo shoots that I had done over the last couple years, and some of them were set up in a way that does kind of cater to male gaze, and I didn't want to use any of those. I didn't want to use anything that was overtly sexual. We wanted something that was just very soft and vulnerable. to convey that. And I think we accomplished that. And so when we did Felina's interview, I explained that to her, how that came about. It was not a requirement for her, but she really liked that concept. And so she wanted to do the same thing. And I believe she accomplished that. And it looks really beautiful and wonderful and really shows who she is. She's not trying to impress or cater to men. She's just being who she is, natural and right there. And so while I appreciate your feedback always, it's time for people to understand that not all nudity is sexual and not all female nudity is for male gaze. So you can take that as you however you like. But we will move on to our guest interview today, which is Johnnie Jae, otherwise known as Brown Ball of Fury, which is of course the name of the episode because she is wonderful and passionate, and she can get really excited and like really passionate and driven, and sometimes she does get kind of emotional and angry when at injustices, and so she's kind of earned that name Brown Ball of Fury, or we shorten it to BBOF a lot, but you'll get to hear and learn more about her, and she's really wonderful. All right, so Johnnie, I have a new co-host. Her name is Felina.
Hello.
Hi, Selena.
How are you?
Pretty good.
I'm excited to do this. This is my first effort at being co-host on the podcast, so you're my guinea pig.
Oh, yay!
All right, so before we let Johnnie Jae jump into her whatever wisdom she's going to spread for us today, I wanted to tell you both something that happened to me last night, because you'll both appreciate this. Okay, so, and Johnnie will love this, because I think the last thing I said to her the other day was, I really hate men right now. So my new advice for men is, it's okay to talk to more than one girl, but if you're going to send them a picture, you should make sure you send it to them separately and not accidentally as a group message. Because that happened to me yesterday.
Dumbass.
Like the photo sent separately, it came in by itself, but the little flirty comment attached went to like all 8 of us. Like, oops, buddy, that was not a good plan.
Oh my God, that's so funny. Boys are so dumb. You really have to be tech savvy to date these days. Like, if you are not tech savvy and you're dating in this era, you are going to screw yourself.
I just hope nobody on that list thought they were the only one.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure
surprise.
There's going to be some other lady who's not quite as easygoing as you are.
Okay, Johnnie, so why don't you I'll let you introduce yourself, because you do it way better than I can, and tell us who you are and what you do. Johnnie's attention span has, are you there?
I am.
There you are.
No, my phone just kind of like weirdly cut out for a second.
Oh, okay. Okay. So why don't you, I'll let you introduce yourself and just kind of tell us what you do.
Okay. All right. Well, my name is Johnnie Jae, and I'm from the Choctaw and Otoe, Missouri tribes. And I am the founder of a tribe called Geek. And right now, we are also running our Indiginerds for Hope campaign, since it is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. And so we've been taking submissions from Indiginerds who have struggled with mental illness and suicide, and they're sharing their art, their stories, videos, and just letting people know that, especially our youth, know that there's always hope, and that, even though that we struggle with mental illness and suicide, that, we can thrive in spite of it.
That's amazing. What tribe did you say it was with again?
The Choctaw and Otoe, Missouri.
Okay. Wow. So how did you get started in that?
Well, I'm a suicide survivor myself. And so, for me, part of my healing started to take place actually, like when I discovered that I wasn't alone. Because for me, having gone through that experience and struggling with mental illness, it was something that I was always told to keep quiet. Don't let anybody know. Don't let people think you're crazy because you won't get a job, you won't go to college. It was something that was very hush-hush. And, for example, like even after the first time that I tried to commit suicide, instead of having to deal with the questions that would come from, like, my absence from school. My family actually just up and moved to the next town over.
So they made you feel like there was something wrong with you and embarrassed for that, for having gone through that experience.
Exactly. And even afterwards, you know, just because there was that stigma attached to suicide and to mental illness, you know, I wasn't even able to really seek help for it until I was in my 20s, and those decisions were mine alone.
And Johnnie Jae and I are related in Indian way. We've got a mutual family. And I remember when that first attempt happened, we were told not to talk about it because we were all kids. How old were you at the time?
I was about 15.
Yeah. I remember the adults talking, and they're like, we're not going to talk about this. We weren't allowed to talk about this. And I remember some of the other kids, how isolating it was for them because they were also dealing with suicidal ideation. But it was this whole, you know, we can't talk about it. And how damaging do you think that is?
I think it's very damaging because, you know, when you're young, as it is, you're already struggling just to find your place in the world and, you know, figure out who you are. And you throw mental illness, you throw suicide into that. And, you know, I mean, it could just upend your entire life so quickly and just spiral out of control, especially if you don't have that support system.
So how did they handle it? I mean, if you don't mind sharing kind of, you know, the details of what happened.
Well, you know, for me, I don't remember much. Bits and pieces have started to come back to me. And the thing that I remember is just so much shame of not wanting anyone to know that this was going on in our family because they were worried about how it would look on the family, that it was more of a reflection on their parenting than it was an actual illness. And it was always a struggle because I also have lupus.
You have what?
And
lupus.
I have lupus.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, okay.
So, you know, in addition to, you know, having a mental health issue, I was also dealing with lupus. And the weird thing is, like, my family has always been more okay with the lupus than the mental illness. Like, I have a phenomenal support system, like, all through my life when it came to dealing with the lupus. With mental illness, nobody knew how to handle that. And so for the longest time, I was just kind of shuffled between homes. I was shuffled between living with my parents, living with my grandparents, living with my aunt, because nobody really knew how to deal with it. And they viewed it more as a behavioral issue rather than an actual, you know, mental illness, like something that was beyond my control.
And during the course of any of this, did they ever seek out medical attention for it? Did you ever see a psychiatrist or psychologist or therapist or?
The most that I was able to do was a school counselor.
Oh, wow.
And it was something that my parents had met with him before I even started school because it was right after the attempt, and we had just moved, and they had let him know what was going on. And so, you know, I was going to talk to him, but it was also something that we don't want other kids to know this happened.
Right.
And so it was something that, you know, like, again, there was such shame and stigma attached to it that, you know, it wasn't just in my home, but it was also at school where, you know, the teachers knew what it was. So they were just kind of, I guess you would say, like, they kept their distance a little. And, like, I was kind of like the weird kid.
Oh, that doesn't help.
Yeah. And I was just kind of the weird kid with, like, the teachers, and everybody was kind of like, you know, had their little kid gloves on with me, I guess. And so it made me feel really awkward, and, you know, I did feel a little more isolated. But at the same time, because the town that we had moved to, I had a lot of family there to begin with. And so I didn't feel as isolated with the kids as much as I did with the adults.
Right.
So, I mean, it was just kind of like a weird gray area I was stuck in through most of my teens because, you know, it's like I didn't really fit in with the kids either because of what I was going through. Like, I even though, like, they were good with me, like, you know, I had a lot of friends, but at the same time, like, I never really felt connected to anything when I was in my teens just because I felt so isolated, like there was something wrong with me. And, you know, I struggled with that, like, all through my teens. And, you know, even in my 20s, it wasn't until, like, I think I was about 21 when I started realizing that, oh, okay, you know, it's okay to talk about this. It's okay because this is what I did live through. Like, this happened, and this is what is happening. And even, that's the first time I got my diagnosis because I am bipolar. And, So like it was the first time I started to understand, like, oh, okay, so like these, like these mood shifts that I was having, like all these feelings, all these thoughts, like these were coming from a very specific place. Like they weren't necessarily my thoughts, but something that was being manifested because of the mental illness. And it took me a long time to be able to discern the difference between what was mine and, what was coming from the mental illness. And it's something that I still try to be very conscious of, because for me, I'm so busy. I stay busy all the time. So if I start to lose focus on just that one aspect, it's so easy for me to spiral without even realizing it. And so, like, I'm never in crisis until I'm in crisis.
Right.
And so,
yeah.
So, like, I'm always having just to be, like, super aware of where I'm at mentally and trying to discern my thoughts. Like, okay, is this thought me? Is this something that I'm actually feeling because of something that I'm going through? Or is this something that's being put in my head through this mental illness? Is it, a thought that's just being popped in there? So, like, it's really hard for me to kind of keep that balance, just because, there's such a, even now, like, I really try to fight against the stigma of suicide. I try to be really open about my experiences and what it's like to live with mental illness, especially as a Native woman. But at the same time, there is still, like, that feeling of shame, because you see so many people that come through it differently. Their experiences, they have mental illness, they've tried to commit suicide, and they come out so much stronger and, so much more together.
Right. Yeah.
And I know it wasn't easy, but at the same time, you see that and you're thinking, why couldn't I do that? Or why can't I hold it together that well? But at the same time, I'm sure other people look at me too and think the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, comparison is never a healthy thing to do.
Yeah.
I think we all tend to do it and always regret it when we do end up comparing ourselves to others and where they're at in their lives.
Exactly.
So you said you were diagnosed as bipolar. Was that when you were 21 and you started addressing the issues?
Yes, and even then, I fight against medical diagnoses.
Right. I mean,
and
yeah,
so, like,
that makes sense.
It took me a long time to accept it, because even the thought of having depression didn't make sense, because I'm always, like, super upbeat, happy, kind of like, like I am now, which I actually didn't realize was a symptom of my mental illness, because, like, I tend to be more manic, so I am more upbeat all the time. I am, like, I talk really fast. There's a lot of things that go into this that I didn't realize were a symptom of my mental illness. I thought they were part of my personality.
Sure.
And they are to an extent, but at the same time, a lot of it is rooted. Like, I have, Summer mentioned my short attention span.
We share that one.
There's so many things that are tied into it that I didn't realize, and it took me a long time to really accept that diagnosis and to really understand that, depression, that bipolarism, that these are actually mental illnesses, and that they're not just something that's deep in a feeling or an emotion. Like, it's deeper than that. And it's not just feelings. It's not just sadness. It's not just, wanting to kill yourself, or it's not just feelings, or, even thoughts. Like, these are actually chemical changes that are occurring in your body or not occurring. And it took me a long time to really understand that, and to really accept that this is what's going on in my body, which was ridiculous, because having lupus, I'm super aware that, like, my hormone levels, even my blood, everything is affected by lupus on that chemical level.
Hey, Johnnie, I'm sorry to cut you off. We're having a hard time hearing you.
Oh, okay.
There you are.
There you are. Thanks.
Am I back?
Yes.
Okay.
You were mentioning that the lupus and your hormone levels.
Yeah, it's just all tied in. Like, it's all tied together.
Absolutely.
And for some reason, I just couldn't fathom depression and bipolarism, these things being and operating on that same level.
Well, and having an effect physically on your body. I mean, the mind-body connection is such a real thing. And I mean, I've not really sought it out. I know I need the same kind of medical attention in my life for various reasons. But I mean, to find a doctor who will just acknowledge that there is a mind-body connection is difficult.
It can be so hard.
Like, I mean, to get the true treatment, be treated like a whole person,
Yes.
rather than just, a pill for every ill is such a big problem.
Yes.
It is. And, I was just having this conversation yesterday because I saw another Native woman tweet, and she was talking about a counseling session that she had where her counselor told her that she was one of the good Indians.
I saw that this morning,
and
I was so angry.
She was one of the good Indians?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, she said
and
you're one of the good
the bad Indians were the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
And which the bad Indians being the drunks and, the people in the area. And
I
was like, wow.
That was her therapist.
Her therapist said this to her?
Yes.
Is she finding a new therapist?
I hope so. I haven't seen her update.
Oh, my God.
Yes.
But yes, I was so angry this morning.
And somebody said, and somebody replied to it because I retweeted. And somebody replied, well, get a new therapist. And I'm thinking, because, for me, it took me almost 20 years to find a therapist that didn't treat my nativeness as being part of the problem.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, I get it. Yeah.
Well, even some of the diagnostic surveys they do, some of the questions, like our culture and belief systems automatically give us a personality disorder according to their diagnostic scales.
Oh, Jesus.
Exactly. Exactly. And I felt bad because, as natives, that's the reason that mental illness and suicide is such a problem is because we do not have access to culturally sensitive or relevant health care. And, when you go into a counselor, most of the time you have to go through IHS and you get whatever doctor they have on staff. And, we know how that happens with IHS, and we know the quality of doctors that we tend to get.
It's usually people right out of medical school because they've done that where IHS will pay for their medical school if they contract to work for IHS clinics for so many years. So they'll work for the first 5 years and then go somewhere. Disciplined. Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
What did you say?
Yep. We get doctors who've been disciplined. They've been disciplined for malpractice or something, and part of their sentence is to work at IHS.
Wow, and IHS, forgive me, I'm completely unfamiliar. So please explain.
Indian Health Services.
Okay,
yeah,
I figured, but okay.
Yeah, it's the clinics that are funded by federal funds for
the tribes.
Right. So now we have IHS, and then some tribes now are getting their own clinics, but even then, a lot of them are still staffed because they're partially funded by IHS. So even then, some of them are still staffed by IHS staff. So it gets kind of difficult to get quality of care.
I understand. Yeah, no, I understand.
And the turnover is so quick. So it's ridiculous. I went through 1 year where I was currently, and I had 3 different primaries in that year.
Oh, yeah. I never know my doctor's name. I don't even bother to ask when I go to an IHS clinic because they're not going to be there the next time I go.
Oh, wow.
Exactly. It's always hilarious, too, because one of the first questions they ask you is, who's your primary?
Yes.
I don't know.
Shouldn't you know that?
Let me check this week.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I never know.
I mean, I don't even bother with healthcare. I mean, that's really sad, but I don't even have a primary care physician. I just don't have one. Because, why? Our medical system's so screwed up. I don't know what's the point.
I haven't been to see anyone in quite a while. I need to.
I have,
but there's no point.
I have fibromyalgia, and I have a rheumatologist who just wants to give me medication.
Right. Yeah, that's the problem I'm having.
It is, and you really have to fight for yourself because. At lupus, at one time, I was on 18 different medications.
Wow.
Oh, I am familiar with how lupus works. My mom passed away about 4 years ago, and she had she had lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, and she was on all sorts of pain meds, all sorts of meds that, one pill caused these side effects. So here's another pill to help with those side effects. But that pill also causes side effects. Right. So let me give you this other pill. Oh, and you're in pain. Let's also give you some opioids on top of that. And let's, see where
And as soon as those start wearing off, you're going to be in more pain from the withdrawals. So.
Yeah. She was on 30 different meds by the time she passed away. So I get it.
Yeah, I mean, it's insane the amount of medications that they will try to prescribe you. And, a lot of people don't know any better, because they put their
Right.
faith in the doctor.
Exactly. They trust that
Because
that physician knows what
it,
they're talking about. Yeah.
yeah, and, and for me, I was diagnosed really young. I was diagnosed when I was 9 with lupus.
Wow.
And so I don't remember life before it, which I
Right.
think has helped me, because I've just always lived the way that I have. And, my mom and my aunt both have lupus as well, and I have several aunts who have lupus. And one of the hardest things for them is trying to adapt afterwards to the things that you can no longer do that they were able to previously do. And then also just, not knowing the healthcare, like, they're expecting a cure, or, they're expecting some alleviation, and they're hoping the doctors can give that to them. And, they on medication after medication after medication. And for me, like, I rarely do medication. Like, I had to fight with my doctors. I will do treatment if it's necessary, and I don't do pain meds at all, which my doctor is always thinking is insane. But for me, what I've experienced is the minute that you take those pain medications, they no longer take you seriously as a patient. And they no longer take your pain seriously, because after you start on those pills, what the image that they get in their mind is that you're just seeking more pills, that you're an addict. And so they don't listen to you when you're telling them that your pain has, increased, or that you're experiencing something different. So, for me, like, I kind of just swore off the pain pills, which sucks because every now and then I do need them. Like, the pain is too much for me, and I'll end up having to go to the ER. And usually I get a shot of Toradol and some steroids, and that'll help. But like, for me, it's just like, I don't want to be on pain medication, because I need, as it is, being Native, they already see you as an addict or a drunk, and they already have these misconceptions of who Native people are. And then you add pain pills onto that, and it's just a whole nother layer of discrimination that you have to go through.
Right. Yeah. And not to mention, they make it impossible for you to function in life.
Right.
I mean,
exactly. And for me, I'm happy and kind of, upbeat all the time, regardless of how I feel. And when I'm on pain pills, I am mean.
Yeah. I can't hardly function on the pain pills. I went here several months ago for migraine. That was on day 4 of not being able to function. So they gave me the shot of the Toradol and Finnergan. And they're trying to. So they went to a regular doctor this last time I went to see a doctor, and I'm like, okay, look, last time we evaluated, I hadn't had migraines this bad in a while, but last time we evaluated it, they're all hormonally connected. So I'm like, they wanted to try just putting me on birth control pills so we can control the hormones, and at least reduce them. She wouldn't do it. She's like, I'll give you pain meds to take for your migraines, but I don't want to give you something you have to take every day. I'm like, so you'll give me pain medication, which I'm still not going to be able to function on those days anyway, which is the whole purpose of me being here, but you won't give me birth control pills.
Oh my God.
I ended up having to go to Planned Parenthood to get birth control pills.
That's so
that I
infuriating.
can function.
Let's treat the symptom and not the root cause.
Yes.
Is what that doctor essentially just said to you.
Yes.
That's
and
such
that's
bullshit.
exactly how healthcare works.
Oh, I know.
Want to put a Band-Aid on the symptom.
Well, it's more profitable to keep us all sick.
Right.
We don't want to treat the actual symptoms or anybody getting better. Heaven forbid, put big pharmaceutical companies out of business.
Oh.
That's why we don't want legal pot.
Right.
It's going to destroy the opioid industry if pot's legal, because, there's pain management that grows in the damn ground.
Right. I tried CBD yesterday for the first time, so
yeah, that
helped the anxiety a little bit. So we'll see. Now, hopefully they were telling the truth, and I'm not going to fail a drug test at work.
You will not.
Yeah, and you know what? I'll give you some advice on that too.
Okay.
It's disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can find weed that has been juiced,
okay,
so much better for you. because you don't get high.
And I'm supposed to
You
drink
get
this?
all of the, yeah, you
What are the
drink
odds
it,
of
and
me?
it is
What are the odds of me actually choking this down without vomiting? Because it sounds like it's going to taste terrible.
I have a question.
Have you ever tried noni juice?
It's revolting, yes.
If you can handle noni juice, you can handle this because it is disgusting.
Just mix it with some carrot
juice.
juice.
You don't get high.
Like, you could juice it with other things.
That's true. That's how I used to get liquid chlorophyll down.
But my root question is, can you still smoke the part that is not juiced, like the pulp? Because I really don't. I think that's a waste. You don't want that to go to. I'm not wasteful like that, guys. I don't want to waste the pot. Is all I'm saying.
Well, I'll tell you, like, I've tried smoking, which was hilarious because I went to Colorado and I got medical marijuana because, like, I was having trouble with my lupus, and somebody was like, just get some marijuana. And I was like, okay. Let me tell you what happened.
Okay.
Oh, please.
Okay, so I had a strain, and it was called OG Venom.
Nice.
And
I love all the names.
And it was really good medical grade marijuana. And when I was talking to the person at the dispensary, you know, they were telling me all the benefits of this particular strain, and they were like, you know, it really helps people with chronic pain and insomnia, which is something that I struggled with. So I was thinking, all right, this is going to be awesome. And I was excited to try it. So I did. And I had my Rocket Cat at the time.
Your what?
And
Rocket Cat.
My Rocket Cat.
She called him Rocket.
And my cat.
Yes.
A cat named Rocket.
A cat named Rocket.
Got it.
Yes. And I only took, and you know, on the advice of the guy at the dispensary, I only took 3 hits. And he said it's really strong.
And this was your first time smoking?
The whole thing. It was my first time trying this. And let me tell you, 3 hits, I was sitting there thinking, oh, well, I don't really feel anything. And I was like, okay. He said I was going to get sleepy. Yeah, he was like, you're going to get sleepy. And none of that was happening. And I was sitting there watching TV, and I had Rocket Cat. She was up on the coffee table, and she was just kind of looking at me like, what are you doing? And I flicked her tail, and she got mad at me, so she turned around the other direction. So then I sat there for about 20 minutes, and I was like, Rocket, Rocket, cat, baby cat, and trying to get her attention literally for about 15, 20 minutes, right?
So it fixed your ADD problem, didn't it?
And looks at me, and I say, meow, and I just started laughing hilariously. I felt like Stewie from Family Guy when he was just like, Mom, Mom, Mom. And then she turns around and he's like, hi.
What do you want?
Poor
I know.
Rocket.
I was like, I did that to my cat. Like, I was thinking, okay, this is crazy. And then, you know, I was still thinking it was just funny. I didn't think it was anything to do with smoking or anything like that.
Not realizing you were high. Okay,
Right.
got it.
Exactly, not realizing it until I turned the TV on, and I was watching CNN and just laughing my butt off.
CNN is not a comedy show.
You're not smoking the right
But I was
strain,
sitting there,
apparently.
who watches CNN and just laughs? Like, everything was hilarious for some reason. And then I got the munchies, and I was just like, holy crap. Like, I've never been this hungry in my life.
Yeah, oh man. How old were you when you smoked for the first time?
This was probably about, I'd say, maybe 2 years ago.
Yeah, it wasn't long, because I remember her telling me this after she came back.
Yeah.
That last time you visited me when I was in Norman.
I feel like we should ask everyone about their first time they got
Oh,
high.
that's a good idea. Like, I don't have a story because it was so long ago I don't remember. But
Ditto.
Yeah.
Actually, I do remember though.
I could give you stories from in between. I don't remember when the first time was.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, like, when I was younger...
Uh-oh, you went quiet again.
We lost you.
Get closer. Hello?
Hello?
There you are. Okay. Try it again.
Yeah, so, you know, like, and the funny thing is, like, I've tried weed, like, you know, maybe 1 or 2 hits, like, when I was younger,
Mm-hmm.
but nothing like this. Like, I don't even count that because it was not this. That was... like,
Yeah.
this is the first time I can actually say that I was stoned. And it was But let me tell you though, like, I got over that first time, and it did help. Like, I was actually on a really good sleep schedule, and, you know, just taking 1 or 2 hits every now and then. Like, I was on a really good sleep schedule. Like, I wasn't having any inflammation or any pain.
Yeah.
Which I was just thinking, wow. And then when I started really looking into it, I was like, oh, so, you know, that's why it's helping, is because it is an anti-inflammatory.
Yes. Right, yeah.
And I was just like, wow, this is kind of cool. And, you know, to know that I didn't have to have any side effects. So when I brought this up to my doctor, he's the one who suggested juicing.
Okay.
He's like, because you don't get high, so you can function in your everyday life. Like, you're not going to be like a burnt out stoner, just like, dude, you know, like.
But maybe I want to be all dude.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, like, but maybe I still wanna. I don't know.
I know. It totally takes the fun out of it, but.
I will say that I've actually tried strands that were heavy sativa based, which is more of a body high than the indica will get you head high and make you feel all floaty. But sativas are used for pain management quite often, and I've had several strands where it barely gives me any sort of head high. I can completely function, but my body feels relaxed. And that, I mean, it's amazing what they can do. It's so awesome.
It's so weird to me because I'm such a person who, like, I always have to know what's going on with my body. And so, like, when they were talking about body highs and everything, and I was just like, what?
It's like a whole new language.
It's a whole new sensation.
Yeah. That's funny. Well, I mean, that's what we need. I'm a full advocate for full legalization of medical marijuana for the entire country. It needs to be legal on a federal level.
I think it should be legal, not just medical.
I mean,
I think we decriminalize.
I'm even for recreational because some people's personalities, it needs to be, you know, a little mellowed out.
Oh, for real.
I'm telling you.
For real.
I used to joke about it. I would never do this, for the record. Don't people try to get me arrested here. I used to make a joke about that when I worked at this one firm, that it was all family law, and they were like, you know, I wish we could just put some of this in a vaporizer for the clients when they come in our room.
Just give them some brownies.
Everybody needs to calm the fuck down.
By the end of the mediation, everybody's like, you can have the car. No, you take the car.
Yes.
It's fine.
You're finally all happy about this divorce. We're not fighting over extension cords.
I mean, it's true though. Because some people just, it helps with anxiety and.
Oh, it helps with everything. It's freaking. It's God's
it's like a miracle drug. Like,
miracle
seriously.
Yes. At the end of the day, we're being told by this so-called free society that we cannot smoke a plant that grows in the fucking ground.
Right.
And I cannot wrap my mind around how we can be considered free and that be a crime. Like, I don't understand it.
You know what's really cool? California is so different. Like, I'm still getting used to just people walking around smoking weed.
Oh, that's right. Johnny abandoned us and moved off to LA.
I don't blame her.
Yeah.
She's trying to recruit me out there now.
I don't blame her. We're going to have legal weed here soon, Summer. Don't escape.
Yeah, but okay, here's what's really cool about California, though, and I think more places need to do this. They're actually starting to expunge the records of previous criminal offenses.
Absolutely.
That's what needs to happen everywhere.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's awesome. That's so awesome.
I was just like, wow. I was like, okay, now this is what needs to happen.
Yes.
Like, that's actually, legalizing weed right there.
Exactly.
It's just going back and correcting those past offenses, which, to me it's so ridiculous anyway, because when you look at prison systems and just how many people have been incarcerated, for minor offenses, like non-violent offenses.
Yes.
It's so ridiculous to me, especially because it is predominantly people of color.
And think about this. I mean, how many people are using marijuana? Yes, it's fun, whatever. And I think there's this, like, stigma that, oh, you just get high because you're a fucking loser and you want to just like be stoned and not be a responsible member of society. When in fact, I know, myself included, like I've used marijuana to manage my anxiety, to manage my mental health issues. And there are so many people who can't afford a doctor, can't afford a real diagnosis, but have discovered that marijuana helps them manage their life and their mental illness so that they can be, a functioning member of society, and get in trouble for it just because they're just trying to fucking function in life.
And we're ruining people's lives over a plant.
It's so dumb.
A plant. Yeah, and can we talk about that incarceration and the school to prison pipeline for a minute, because I'm still bitchy about something that happened the other day.
Oh, shit.
So my kid, he's 15. And
yeah, I was going to say, which one?
Teenagers are stupid. Let's just start there. And unfortunately, this one is just like his mom. So he gets caught at school the other day with a vape. Okay, fine. Punish his ass at school. He deserves it. It was a stupid move.
Yeah, don't take that shit to school.
But he's got a $181 ticket and a mandatory court appearance where he can get community service and or probation. And we all know probation is a fucking racket that just sets people up for failure and is used to escalate minor offenses. And so the principal calls me and we're talking about this. Of course, I'm at work at the time, so I go into another room and I'm talking to him. First of all, he talks down to me, which I don't handle very well. I do not handle men condescending to me very well at all.
No.
And so I'm telling him how ridiculous this is, and he's explaining to me about zero tolerance policies. I'm like, no, I understand what it is. I also understand it's inherently problematic, and all he'll say is okay. And in the end, I kind of yelled at the principal a little bit and told him I hope he's proud of his contribution to the school to prison pipeline.
Oh my God, I love you, Summer.
On him.
I love you.
But the reality is, it's ridiculous that we're referring students to law enforcement for harmless offenses.
Yeah.
And children of color are referred to what is it, like 3 times the rate of other students for the same offenses? Johnny, do you remember?
I want to say it might even be higher than that.
It's crazy disproportionate.
It is. And especially when you look at how many natives are incarcerated, especially our youth. Like, we're less than 2% of the population.
Right.
Yet we make up, something like 50 or 60%?
It's a lot. I don't know.
Of incarcerated youth?
Yeah, it's a lot. My oldest son, when we were here in Norman at one point, he was referred to law enforcement on a vandalism complaint because he threw an apple core outside and it bounced off the ground and hit the side of the building. Caused no damage, but because it hit the building, they referred him for a vandalism complaint. He threw
a biodegradable.
Yeah, he was trying to throw it for the birds to eat. He was like 13. He's autistic. He did not think through the fact that it could bounce off the ground.
That's the dumbest shit I've ever heard.
Yes, I was so angry. But I mean, this stuff it's not uncommon, and that's part of the problem is we're funneling these kids into the system as children.
Mm-hmm. And for, like you said, that's not even a criminal offense.
Right.
No kid should be in the system for that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's ridiculous because you even see parents being scrutinized for letting their kids walk the dog. People are having Child Protective Services called on them because their kid is walking the dog down the street by themselves.
Yes, we had, when I lived over in Hall Park, which is, well, it used to be Hall Park, now it's part of Norman, over on the east side. We lived a couple blocks from the school, a few, so it was too close for the bus. My daughter repeatedly got the police called on her for walking home from school by herself. They didn't call. Halfway she walked with another group, and then the other half was just by herself because our house was a little bit off the street there. She was the only child who ever got the police called on her. She was also the only brown child walking down that sidewalk. It was the same woman every time. She didn't want the little brown kid walking by her house.
Bitch.
Yeah. And the last time, and that's what made us move to the other side of Norman, was because the last time she got surrounded by 4 cop cars rolled up on her and terrified her. And at the time, her sister was still a foster placement. So I'm like, the CPS investigation could result in her getting yanked to put back in foster care.
How old was she?
At that time, 10.
My God.
So definitely old enough to walk home from school.
Yeah, I mean, my daughter's 9. I can't imagine how terrified she would be at 10 years old having 4 cop cars.
I used to walk to school as a second grader.
Right.
Like, I mean, my school was a little bit away from where we live, but like, you know, like in the morning you get up, you had a choice. You could ride the bus or you could walk to school, and it was so. To me, it was such the cool thing to do is to walk to school with your friends. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because, like, I walked to school, like, clear up till I was in, like, 7th grade.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't. I lived out in the country. I was isolated. So
we were like
I didn't get to do that.
We were on the bus for 2 hours.
But I always envied the kids who got to do that. I was like, I want to walk to
well, that
school.
was one of the biggest culture shocks, I think, was when I went to Frontier High School, which is in a little town called Red Rock. And it's a very rural community. And I had come from, like, mostly urban areas where you could walk to school. So then all of a sudden you're having to get to the bus stop, like, maybe an hour and a half before school actually starts.
Yep.
To get on a bus. And you're out there freezing your butt off waiting for the bus.
Yeah, that was my life, too. I mean, I grew up out in the country.
And then you get on the bus, and then you have to smell the fumes of the diesel.
And you're on the bus for, like, an hour before you get to school.
And it's just, like... And then you get to school, and you have, like, maybe 5 or 10 minutes to try and grab breakfast.
To eat and then go to class, yes. That's how I grew up. It was 2 hours on the bus each way. I was teasing one of my friends the other day because they were like... They're from Oklahoma City, right? So always lived urban.
Yeah.
And had to drive out to my house, which honestly, it's not a small town anymore. I don't know what everybody's talking about. But they're like, you live all the way out in Amarillo. This is so far out. It's 28 minutes for me to drive out there. Where I'm from, you got to go that far for a grocery store.
Yeah.
They're complaining.
Seriously. Yeah, no, I get it.
I know. I always just think of how different it is, like from when I was a kid to now.
Uh-huh.
And I'm just amazed. Like, the kids will never know the terrors that we experience.
Like what?
For one, teachers could actually beat our butts when we got in trouble.
Some schools still do that. Some schools in Oklahoma still do that.
Yeah, some schools still do. But it's so weird, the attitude change, because you remember back then, like, your parents are like, oh, yeah, you handle it. And then now it's like, don't you touch my child. My child is a perfect little innocent snowflake.
Well, I'm in between. Like, I don't want anybody else hitting my kid. Like, I would beat your ass if you touch my kid. Just send him home. I would take care of this.
You know, but it's so different, like, the attitude, because, you know, like, I think when and maybe it's just because of how I grew up, you know, like, knowing that there were consequences to your actions, because my parents didn't really set down rules.
Really?
Yeah, me neither.
They really just told us, if you're going to do it, just remember that there are consequences to every action. So every decision you make, that's on you. And you're going to have to deal with whatever comes from that decision.
I just got in trouble for being big-mouthed.
Yeah,
See, I was a preacher's kid, and so it was all about the appearances. So, like, they came down hard anytime you did anything that might make them look bad.
Oh, I mean,
so like you were if you got beat at school, you were getting beat 3 times harder when you got home.
You know what that's
it taught me nothing. It taught me nothing, but don't piss them off and don't get caught. I was the best fucking liar in the county.
And it had the opposite effect on me because I was super careful because I think it was one time, and I was really little when this happened, but apparently I ran out into the road.
Uh-oh.
And my grandpa spanked me. And it was the only time he ever spanked me, and he cried.
I bet he did. I can't imagine him spanking you. You were his favorite.
Yeah, so he told me that, and then, when you get older, they start talking about consequences and stuff. And for me, it was, don't do anything that's going to cause them to cry. And also, don't do anything that's going to get me in trouble. I was super careful. I was like, I disciplined my freaking self. I got a B,
I wish I had
and I grounded myself for 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And my parents thought I was insane because it was a B. But I was so disappointed in myself. Like, I was a brown-nosing overachiever when I was little.
My daughter is so hard on herself that she doesn't require discipline. I mean, like, if she just gets the hint of me being disappointed in her, that's enough.
Aww.
But when I try to actually punish her, like, it's a fucking negotiation. She's like, well, which toys are you going to take away? You know, like she's really contemplating which ones she can live without. Because if I'm not going to say an important one, she's going to do whatever the fuck she wants to do anyway.
That was me.
Me too.
Have you started evaluating which law school to send her to yet? Because she's got the
Oh my
perfect mind for it.
Oh, I know.
You know, the funny thing is my parents discovered that grounding me really had no effect because I didn't really go anywhere or hang out with anyone to begin with. So they started, when I would get grounded or I would get punished, they would take my school book so I couldn't do my homework.
Oh, that's so weird.
So that became the punishment. Like, my mom would come in my room, she would grab my book, she would grab my radio, anything, or in my just books that I had, and that was my version of being grounded. Is she would take everything, and it was hell.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, you have to like figure out what actually affects your child's mentality. Because I'll look at Sophia and she's like, I don't give a fuck. Like, she's got this little attitude, and she's like, fine, take my toys, take whatever. Oh, I'm grounded, I don't care. But then like you find that one thing that they care about. That's what you take. That's how you discipline. You don't hit them. You take them. They take the things they care about.
My mom was just, you know, she found that with the book because she would give them back to me the next morning. So then there I am waiting for the bus, trying to get homework done that I was supposed to do the night before. And just like panic mode. Aww. And then, you know, I'd straighten my butt up because I didn't want to do that anymore.
That is so cute.
I've fake thrown away so many of my daughter's toys. I can't do it anymore because she knows that I really just like pull them out of the trash and put them somewhere else later. But it's so traumatizing for her to watch me throw them in the trash can. That's what happens.
Every one of my kids is different, so I have to like juggle and figure out
what works
for each one.
It's just a different experience too. Just watching kids like now, you know, it's what they care about is so different than what we cared about too.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, I'm getting ready to be 38, and I didn't realize how much of a huge age gap there is until I start looking at younger kids now, and I'm just thinking, geez, did I ever look that young? Or, you know, like, did I behave that way? And it's so crazy.
Yes, you did. We were all little assholes.
Yeah, it's like, was I? You know, like, I'm sitting there and I always crack up because I'm thinking, man, these kids will never know what it's like to try and sneak notes to each other.
Oh, that was such
now they're sneaking around texting and class.
That was such a great part of growing up was writing little notes and sneaking them around. I had fake names for me and my friends.
Oh, really?
Because my dad would read my notes or find them or whatever, and so he needed to not know who we were talking about. So
so you had a code.
We all had code names, yeah.
and folding the notes, you know. I mean,
there was like this whole art to it.
It was. I still have a box somewhere of notes that me and my friends passed back and forth and little drawings and stuff. Yeah. Very nostalgic. So now I'm feeling old.
Right?
Yeah. I feel so old. Oh my God. I'm about to be 37, so I'm right there with you.
Oh, so we're all about the same age.
Yeah. And you know, you're also looking at kids like, I think about what dating was like when I was a teenager. Not that I really dated anyone, but, you know, I remember like, you know, the boy asking you out and, you know, actually having to come to your house and meet your parents. And, you know, I look at dating now and these kids are just like, you know, it's not really dating. It's just, there's the hookup culture, which there's nothing wrong with. But, you know, it kind of, to me, it's just like, man, you kids are never going to know what it was like to.
I mean, the hookup culture really shouldn't be for kids.
Exactly.
You know, like when you're in
well, it was when I was a kid. I don't know where y'all were at.
I mean, it was. I'm not saying I didn't do it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that there are like when I got divorced and you know, started dating again, like it was my choice, you know. Mm-hmm. But whenever I was young and I was, you know, just leaving high school or in high school still, early college years, I was seeking like male approval. It was, you know, because of emotional trauma that I was, you know, seeking physical attention. And so it was so different to be an adult in your 30s, a woman in your 30s, and like consciously making the choice to hook up with someone because you are in charge of your own choices and your own body, versus when you're, you know, 16, 17 years old and maybe don't have a father figure that you should have or whatever, and you're trying to compensate and using sex and those types of, that type of attention as like a way to, manage. And I mean, and so I just feel like you don't have the emotional and mental capacity at that age to really be making a conscious choice of what you're doing. You know what I'm saying?
I think it depends, yeah.
And it certainly does depend on the child, but the why behind it, I think, is really important to address. Like, and if I would have had, someone around who talked to me about those things, like, it just needs to be a conversation you have with your daughters and your sons, of course.
And just how different it is too, because like when I was younger, it was like, oh, kind of like peer pressure, like, I dare you to kiss this guy, or, stuff like that, like just innocent, fun stuff. And then now it's like you got kids making sex videos and...
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so glad we didn't have
cameras
on the phone.
I mean, there would be a picture of me naked mud wrestling at 17 if there was videos. So thank God.
Why was there not a picture of this, Felina?
It exists on a Polaroid somewhere.
If anyone has that Polaroid...
I know, it's just funny how, like, things have changed with, like, with technology and just all these things. And I know I sound really old by saying that, but it's funny just how, the culture has shifted and how attitudes have changed just with technology alone. Like, it's like you see teens doing now, like, I dare you to do this, I dare you to do that. And when we were kids, it was stupid stuff, like stupid. But we weren't eating Tide Pods.
Right. We also weren't having...
I don't know. I mean, I had classmates that were snorting sweet tarts, so I don't know that we were that much brighter.
But also the things that
got a point there.
The things that you did at that age weren't also being forever memorialized on the internet.
Yes, and you weren't trying to do it for likes. You know what I mean?
Right, the real time,
to become like the social media star,
where it becomes this competition.
Yeah,
and so they're trying to do stupider and stupider stuff too.
That need for attention. I mean, just thinking off the cuff here, I could see myself at 16. Rather than seeking male approval through sexual, like being promiscuous or whatever, I probably would have been a Instagram, internet, 16-year-old porn star for as much as I could have gotten away with. Because that's just filling that need for attention and approval at that age. So,
and you mentioned the porn as teenagers. I cannot tell you how many how many kids I've had to go talk to at the request of their parents to explain to them the legal ramifications of sending nudes to each other when they're underage.
Oh my God.
Because you're manufacturing child porn, you're transmitting. If you're sending it across state lines, you're talking federal laws here.
Yeah.
So I have to have this conversation with a lot of teenagers because apparently parents are afraid to.
Oh my God.
Like,
you gotta
do you want
talk
your kid being prosecuted?
Ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so sad to see that too. But at the same time, it's just like, I don't know. I think it's also a little. There's pros and cons to things, but I think with social media too, before, like, to get that attention, it had to be something that had to be physically done.
Yeah.
And then now, kids can do it online and never have to touch or be touched. And so I do think that for some kids, it may be a little safer.
It's true. Yeah.
Because they're not going out and meeting up with strange people or just letting, someone take advantage of them in person, just to fulfill something that's lacking for them. And that's a sad reality that, we don't address enough. We always talk about the struggles that we face with, like, financials, that stability. And, people talk about homes and kids, they were different in our day. Well, let's talk about why they're different. Because now a lot of these kids have to raise themselves. Because both parents have to work.
I raised myself. I was alone all the time. My dad had 3 jobs, and he was a single parent, and I was alone all the time. And I know that's a big part of where that came from, that need for attention. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like, I always think about this too, because I look at our tribes. We've been doing some great work and developing our own economies, getting tribal businesses, but at the same time, where these businesses are launched, away from communities where parents have to travel, 30 to an hour or more to get to work, that leaves these kids unattended. And I think about where I grew up, and, we have a lot of tribal businesses where, if you want to work at that business, you have to travel 30 to an hour and a half away. One of the businesses is on the state line of Kansas and Oklahoma, which is like almost 2-hour drive from where our community is. And when you have both parents working, that's leaving these kids on their own and unsupported because, even for if they play sports, they're not having that support in the stands anymore where both parents are there. It's going to be one or the other. And then
I have been in therapy for the last 7-8 months and discovered what a narcissistic wound is, which I have. But it stems from not having that attention from your parents that, very specific ages where, you're supposed to be, 4 or 5 years old on the playground swinging and be able to always look over at your mom or your dad on the bench and make sure they're looking at you and paying attention to you. And when you don't have that, it creates a constant need for attention, a need to be, a number one in someone's eyes. And so you're forever seeking a Band-Aid to that wound that's created by not having that attention, that support at, really critical young ages.
Yeah, and and it's sad because I remember being young too, and I helped raise my brothers and sisters, and a lot of it was you hear a lot of like, oh, they're so mature for their age, or
I got that a lot.
They're pretty smart for their age, and it's like, no, but you're still kids.
Yeah.
They're still I was still a kid.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't have been having to raise my brothers or sisters the way that, I was having to at the time, especially because, for me, I always helped with my brothers and sisters. It was no big deal. But when I was about 18, getting ready to head off to college, my mom left my dad. And my brothers and sisters really didn't understand at the time. And they were still, my little sister was, I think, in about 4th or 5th grade. And it really impacted them. Because my mom she's pretty much like a Donna Reed when we were growing up. We'd have cookies when we came home from school. She was always there. She was just constantly there for us. And not to say our relationship with her was perfect or anything, but, she was always there. And then all of a sudden for her to be gone, because my dad, he used to work a lot. And so all of a sudden we didn't have any parents. We didn't have that support that we were used to having. And I stayed. I didn't go off to college. I stayed at home so I could help my dad with my brothers and sisters. And I think about that now, and you hear people, oh, she's so mature for her age. And I was thinking about, my little sister was young enough to where she actually started calling me mom, which was really awkward. But I was the only mother figure that she had.
And she wanted someone to identify as that role in her life.
Yeah, she wanted to have that. And, so, I think about that, and, I think about people at that time where, oh, you're so mature, I don't know if I could have made that decision at your age. And it was almost but it wasn't my decision.
It wasn't a choice, yeah.
Yeah, and I could have gone, but then what would have happened to my brothers and sisters? And I think about that all the time because, we struggled and they struggled. My brother Elijah is the only one of my siblings to have graduated high school. Even me, I didn't really even graduate high school either. I got my GED, which really ticked my mom off because I dropped out 6 months before graduation.
Oh my gosh.
And she went home. She was in Oklahoma to visit, and we were living in New Mexico at the time. But I dropped out 6 months to graduation because I was so miserable in the school. And it just wasn't, I wasn't learning. I was just there. And I was taking college classes at UNM. And, I had asked my counselor about this before winter term ended. And she was just she's like, you're already taking college classes. She goes, you already have your credits. You could just start full time this next semester if that's something you're interested in. And so I started plotting, and I withdrew from school, and I took the GED test that day. I started taking it. It was 2 days to finish the test, and then about a week later, I got my results, and then I started UNM full time.
So they let you withdraw from school without parental approval?
Well, I was 18 at the time.
You were already 18.
Yeah, so I was able to withdraw myself, and I didn't tell my mom. she thought I was going to school. Because she would drop me off, and then I would catch the bus and go to my college classes.
She's sneaking around to go to college.
That's so funny.
And let me tell you,
this is in line with your book punishment. This all makes sense.
Yes. And my mom, let me tell you, she almost killed me because she went to go pick us up to take us out of school early. And me and my brother were at the high school, so she went to the high school to pick us up, and they told her that I hadn't been in school since January.
Oh, wow.
They were like, she withdrew herself, and my mom thought I had dropped out and I was just screwing around.
Right.
And then she found out I was in college, which ticked her off even worse because she wanted a high school graduation. Like, that's something she wanted.
She wanted
felt
the ceremony of it all.
That was her milestone, damn it. How dare you take it from her?
Exactly. And, I didn't feel bad about it because, that's what I wanted to do. And I had planned to transfer when it was time for me to actually go to college. I wanted to go to a real college. Well, not that I wasn't going to a real college, but, have that experience, stay in a dorm and, maybe join a sorority and do something stupid. But, that's the experience I wanted, and it wasn't the one I got. But I think about how those decisions really impacted, and just the way people were always just like, oh, you were so mature, or you did this, and it's like, no, I wasn't. My hand was kind of forced in a way, and I look at how that impacted not just me but my brothers and sisters, because my brother, but all my siblings, we were all overachievers in some way.
How many of you are there?
Because there's four of us.
Okay.
But we were all overachievers because of my parents. They wanted us to achieve something. So, my brother and sister, my brother Josh and my sister Remy were really into sports, phenomenally good. My sister is a really good softball player, basketball player, you name it, she did it. My brother Josh was actually being scouted for college football and baseball by the time he was in 7th grade.
Wow.
And, they were phenomenally good. And my brother, once my mom left, that really affected our entire family, and just the routes that we were taking in our lives, because all of a sudden we didn't have that support system.
Right.
And,
which is what enabled you to be overachievers, I'm sure.
Exactly, which really did, because, your parents were always there to take you to practice, pick you up, talk about what was going on, to be there at your games. And for my brother, and I felt bad for him too, because the school system is so jacked up when it comes to sports. But he was always a star football player, and when he got to be a senior, about the same time that I dropped out to go to college, he found out he wasn't going to be graduating high school.
Oh.
And he didn't and it was because he didn't have enough credits. They were letting him play while he was ineligible.
Yeah.
And he wasn't gaining credits. He had enough credits, the credits that he did have, he would have still been deemed a freshman.
Wow. Yeah, the school I went to was that sports-centric too.
Yeah, because we
learned nothing in the 4 years of high school because they had gotten caught letting them play while they were ineligible. And so the solution was to just not teach anything in our classes so that the sports stars could stay eligible in order to play legally. So we learned nothing in the 4 years. So the few that do come out with college scholarships then fail out in their freshman year because they're reading at a 6th grade level.
Wow.
Wow. And I felt bad for my brother because, they were letting him do everything. He went to, he was playing football. They went to state championships. They, for him, he thought he was doing enough to pass. For us, as, because we, we would get report cards and, parent-teacher conferences, and they never mentioned anything.
Wow.
That he was failing or anything like that, because if he had, my dad especially would have pulled him.
Right.
Yeah.
And
they didn't want that.
Exactly.
No, they didn't. And, I always felt so bad for him because, for him, his future was so bright, because the minute he turned it, became a senior, that's really when colleges started coming. And, he had scholarships, and he was like, I'm set, and I get to play football, I get to play baseball. And then for that to happen was absolutely devastating. And he ended up just dropping out because, and I could totally see why he did too, because when we went to the meeting to figure out what we could do, with, taking night courses or what could help him, they were basically like, there's no way he could catch up in time to graduate with his class.
Mm-mm.
And that devastated him because he did so much for, his class in terms of
Right.
sports, in
Oh
terms
my
of
God.
just being, like,
To be used.
Where
it
was
was
this
devastating.
at?
This was in Taos.
In Taos, New Mexico?
hmm
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was just a messed up situation. And he ended up getting his GED and going to college.
Well, that's good.
I have these
And it's
like
still,
grandiose ideas that like other states have their education system figured out,
But
and
apparently
Oklahoma just
not.
sucks ass.
oh no,
But apparently
no.
it
I
just-
thought
it should
when
be
we
everywhere.
moved from Oklahoma, I was so stoked because I thought the same thing. I was like, oh, this is going to be a new challenge. It's a bigger school. I was like, all right. And then I get there, and they were way behind where we were in Oklahoma.
No.
Wow.
That is so sad to be behind
That
Oklahoma.
is really sad.
It
To be
was
behind,
like,
yeah.
I was so devastated because, the school system there was so messed up. I mean, even me, when we moved, I was a senior,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't actually start school until probably about the second semester
Oh, wow.
because they didn't have enough room for me as a student.
Wow. Can they do that?
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, that's not legal, is it?
I wouldn't think so,
Well,
but who knows?
I don't know anymore.
Yeah, you really don't because, I was like, wow. And my brother, the one I was just talking about, he was a freshman, and because he played football, he was enrolled right away.
Oh, yeah.
Wow,
They made room
of
for
course,
him.
Yeah.
hmm
What about
And
us
so-
drama nerds? I mean, nobody's gonna make
Yeah,
room for me.
exactly.
I bet.
Drama doesn't bring money to the
Exactly.
school.
Dang it.
I know, and the same thing, like with my sister too. Like she was, by the time she was in 8th grade, she was drinking pretty heavily,
Mm.
and the thing I remember with my sister was like she was always smart. Like her grades never dropped. So we didn't realize that she was having a problem. Like I knew she was struggling with my mom not being around and everything. But as far as that, she just seemed like, like a normal kid, like herself. And then all of a sudden, she started disappearing.
Did your siblings struggle with mental illness or depression or anything as well?
Honestly, I really do think they did. But especially my brother Elijah, because he's always been an oddball like me. And out of all my brothers and sisters, I really do think that, he probably does have an underlying mental illness condition that's never really been diagnosed because he doesn't go anywhere.
Mm.
Right. So how do you,
literally-
how do you deal with the challenge of getting people to just come in and talk? Because I know I'm kind of trying to bring the conversation back to your initial and what you're doing with your work. But I mean, how do you deal with that challenge of getting people to come in and just address it in the first place?
That is the challenge. And a lot of that has to do with taking away that stigma and seeing that other people are struggling with that as well.
Mhm.
And, for me, I'm open, and it makes my family super uncomfortable for me
Yes.
to be so open, especially now. And even within just the family, they don't know how to treat me. If they can ignore the problem, good. But when I struggle and I let people know I'm struggling, I don't keep that in. And when I go home, they have kid gloves too because they don't know what's going to trigger me or how it works. Like they've never taken the time to really understand it. So, it is scary for them.
Mm-hmm.
And, especially because so much of what people know about mental illness comes from stereotypes, just like, what people know about natives. It comes from stereotypes.
So what else do you do? I mean, you share your own story, and that's such a great way to overcome stigma and make other people feel comfortable coming forward. Are there any other people who are talking about their experiences or,
Yes. One of the things that I started, because, for me, that's where my healing really started, was just learning that I wasn't alone in that
Right.
struggle. But I started Indiginerd for Hope through a tribe called Geek, because for me, just being that kind of weird kid when you're younger, I was super nerdy and geeky. I never felt like I belonged really anywhere. And geek culture was where I found my place. And
A tribe called Geek.
Yes, that's
I love it. I love it.
But, for Native, it's okay to be an athlete. It's okay to be, super academic. It's okay. But it's not okay to be a geek. It's not okay to be goth or emo or, all these different subcultures that kids identify with. And so through Indiginerd for Hope and just wanting to address the rates of suicide that we have among our Native youth, and having been a Native youth that, felt isolated because of my interest and, because of what I was going through, I wanted to find a way to get people talking. So we started through Indigenerd for Hope. The first thing that we did was a thunderclap campaign.
Oh, right.
And Thunderclap is like the social media site where you start a campaign and you can have an image or a text message or a video, and you designate a day that will launch. And by that day, you have to have so many people sign up to support that campaign. And once you hit that number on the day that's designated, it will launch that message out across Twitter, Facebook, and Tumblr. And so that's how we started doing this. And then now what we're doing is we're having people that have struggled with mental illness and suicide submit art, poetry, music, just something that will either share their story or just send a message of hope to other Native youth that, there's always hope. And it's been really working. Like the submissions that we've gotten so far are they're so amazing. Like I was reading a submission and it's poetry. And I actually did a video for this because I was so moved by the words, because I was actually crying by the time I got to the end, because, there was so much in there that I needed to hear when I was younger.
Oh,
and even now as an older woman, it still resonates with me, because you still need to have somebody tell you that, you have a voice, that you have power, that you're beautiful, and that you belong. And so, I did a video for this submission just because for me it was so powerful, and I have more that's coming. I actually had a girl send in a song that she wrote, and I was listening to it last night, and I was just thinking, holy cow, we have such amazing Native talent.
The art that comes from pain is always so beautiful. I mean,
it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a healthy way of healing. It's so underutilized.
It really is.
It really is, because for me, healing also comes through creating.
Yes,
I do
absolutely.
a lot of art. I sing.
Oh yeah, and that's why I write music and sing. That's the whole reason behind it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much healing that comes from that,
mm-hmm.
and being able to just express yourself through some medium. And so that's why we started doing this campaign through Indigenerd through Hope and then I also do a lot of workshops where, again, I use a lot of art
mm-hmm.
To help kids express themselves and to find healthy ways to tell their stories, because one of the things that I'm always consciously aware of is that you never know what's going to trigger somebody.
Right.
And you never know how deeply somebody has been impacted by an experience in their life, that even just hearing a story, if somebody's just bluntly open about their story, that could trigger them, and, it could cause them to harm themselves. So I'm always conscious about the ways that I share stories, and especially mine. I know when to edit, what to take out, and, and not just not to censor myself, but more as just kind of courtesy to others,
mm-hmm.
and find ways that, I can express that same message, that you can get through this, that you can experience this, that you could go through this, you can be traumatized, but at the same time you can come out and you can thrive in spite of it. It doesn't have to define you. And I try to find ways to send that message without having to rely on, graphic details, or having to be that, or having to have that shock value.
And art's a great way to do that. Yeah.
It really is.
I want to see some of the submissions. You'll have to send us the links to the videos and things so that we can share them.
Yeah, well, you could go to our website for A Tribe Called Geek, www.atribecalledgeek.com, and we have all the submissions posted on our website, but we also have them posted on our Twitter and our Facebook and Instagram as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, can you share your Facebook and Instagram and all that so people can keep up with you and your organizations here as we wrap up, please?
Oh, absolutely. You can find A Tribe Called Geek on Twitter at Tribe Called Geek, no A in there, because of character limitations. The same with Facebook, it's just Tribe Called Geek. And on Instagram, it is A Tribe Called Geek.
That's how we ended up with different Twitter handle than the other social media, too, because the character limitations messed it up.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we ended up with show on Twitter instead of podcast.
You can contact the podcast at brokebrokenpodcast@gmail.com. The Broken Podcast can be found on Twitter, at Broke Broken Show, on Instagram and Facebook at Broke Broken Podcast.